gets high on you, and the space he invades, he gets by on you.
storm, riders on the storm. Into this house we're born, into this world we're thrown, like a dog without a bone and hacked we're out alone. Riders on the storm, there's a killer on the road, his brain is squirming like a toad. Take a long holiday, let your children play. If you give this man a ride, sweet family dog without a bone, an actor out alone, riders on the storm. Riders on the storm.
Stepping in the
die the sounds, and the flowers bloom like madness in the spring. Sun streaking cold, an old man wandering lonely, taking time the only way he knows. Leg hurting bad as he bends to pick a docket. He goes down to the bog and warms his feet. Feeling alone, the armies of the road, salvation and a mode, a cup of tea. Aqualung, my friend, don't you start away uneasy. You poor old sod, you see it's only me. Aqualung, my friend, don't just start away uneasy. You poor old sod, you see it's only me. Sitting on the park bench, eyeing little girls with bad intent. Snot running down his nose, greasy fingers smearing shabby clothes. Hey, Aqualung, drying in the cold sun, watching as the pretty panties run. Hey, Aqualung, feeling like a dead duck, spitting out pieces of his broken luck. Hey, Aqualung.
For too long now, there were secrets in my mind. For too long now, there were things I should have said. In the darkness, I was stumbling for the door to find a reason, to find the time, the place, the hour, waiting for the winter sun and the cold light of day. slipping away.
magical about that one. For that reason, it's one of my favorite tracks, so glad you're here to listen.